welcome back. Today I'll be reading aloud to you from this wonderful book. We've been reading chapters of this for a while, so you might be familiar. Birds That Every Child Should Know by Nelchi Balanchan. This book was published in 1907. I procured it from a library that was being consolidated and was giving away books. And it's a really cool read, a very poetic take from a naturalist on the birds. So if you'd like to catch up on previous chapters of the book, learn more about the birds, I will link to a playlist below. And for today, we will read chapter 8 and learn all about the sparrows. And there are quite a few sparrows for us to learn about today. I hope you enjoy. Chapter 8, The Sparrow Tribe. Song Sparrow, Swamp Sparrow, Field Sparrow, Vesper Sparrow, Chipping Sparrow, Tree Sparrow, White-throated Sparrow, Fox Sparrow. The Sparrow Tribe. The sparrows are always with us. There is not a day in the year when you cannot find at least one member of the great tribe, which comprises 1/7 of all our birds, by far the largest North American family. What is the secret of their triumphant numbers? Many members of the hardy, prolific clan, wearing dull brown and gray-streaked feathers in perfect color harmony with the grassy, bushy places or dusty roadsides where they live, are usually overlooked by enemies in search of a dinner. Undoubtedly, their protective coloring has much to do with their increase. They are small birds mostly, not one so large as a robin. Sparrows being seed-eaters chiefly, although none of the tribe refuses insect meat in season, and all give it to their nestlings, there is never a time when they cannot find food, even at the frozen north, where some weedy stalks project above the snow. They are not fastidious. Fussy birds, like fussy people, have a hard time in this world. But the whole sparrow tribe, with few exceptions, make the best of things as they find them, and readily adapt themselves to whatever conditions they meet. How wonderfully that saucy little gamin, the English sparrow, has adjusted himself to this new land. Members of the more aristocratic finch and grosbeak branches of the family, however, who wear brighter colors, pay the penalty by decreasing numbers as our boasted civilization surrounds them. Gay feathers afford a shining mark. Naturally, grosbeaks prefer to live among protective trees. They are delightful singers, and so, indeed, are some of their plain little sparrow cousins. All members of the family have strong, conical bills, well suited to crush seeds, and gizzards like a chicken's to grind them fine. These little grist mills within the birds' bodies extract all the nourishment there is from the seed. The sparrow tribe, you will notice, do immense service by destroying the seeds of weeds which, but for them, would quickly overrun the farmer's fields and choke his crops. Because these hardy gleaners can pick up a living almost anywhere, they do not need to make very long journeys every spring and autumn. Their migrations are comparatively short when undertaken at all. As a rule, their flight is labored, slow, and rather heavy, just the opposite from the wonderfully swift and graceful flight of the swallows. The Song Sparrow. This is most children's favorite bird. Is it yours? Although by no means the belle of the family, the Song Sparrow is beloved throughout its vast range, if for no other reason than because it is irrepressibly cheerful. Good spirits are contagious. Everyone feels better for having a neighbor always in a good humor. Most birds mope when it rains, or when they shed their feathers, or when the weather is cold and dreary, or when something doesn't please them, and cultivate their voices only when they fall in love in the happy springtime. But you may hear the hearty, healthful song sparrow's merry cheer almost every month in the year, in fair weather or in foul, in the middle of the night and in broad daylight. When a little mate is to be wooed with light-hearted vivacity, when 2, 3, or even 4 broods severely tax the singer's energy throughout the summer, when clothes must be changed in August, and when the cold of approaching winter drives every other singer from the choir. The most familiar song, for this tuneful sparrow has at least 6 similar but slightly different melodies in his repertoire, begins with a full round note 3 times repeated, then dashes off into a sweet, short, lively, intricate strain that almost trips itself in its hasty utterance. Few people whistle well enough to imitate it. Few birds can rival the musical ecstasy. Artlessly self-confident and not at all bashful, the song sparrow mounts to a conspicuous perch when he sings, rather than let his efforts be muffled by foliage. Don't mistake him for an English sparrow. Notice his distinguishing marks. The fine dark streaks on his light breast tend to form a larger blotch in the center. You see him singing on the extended branch of some low tree, on the topmost twig of a bush, on a fence or a piazza railing from which he dives downward into the grass or flies straight along into the bushes, his tail working like a pump handle as if to help his flight. Very rarely he flies upward. Diving into a bush is one of his specialties. He best likes to live in regions near water. The song sparrows that come almost every day in the year, among many other birds, to my piazza roof for waste canary seed and such delicacies, show refreshing spirit in driving off the English sparrows who, let it be recorded, cannot get a morsel until the song sparrows are abundantly satisfied. One of the latter is quite able to keep off half a dozen of his English cousins. How does he do it? Not by his superior size, for the measurements of both birds show that they are about the same length, although the song sparrow's slightly longer and more graceful tail makes him appear a trifle larger. Certainly not by any rowdy, bold assaults, which are the English bird's specialty, but by simply assuming superiority and expressing it only by running in a threatening attitude toward each English sparrow who dares to alight on the roof, does he bluff him into flying away again. There is never a fight, not even an ill-mannered scolding. Just quiet monopoly for a few minutes than a joyous outburst of song. After that, the English sparrows may take the songster's leavings. Swamp Sparrow. Where rails thread their way among the rushes, and red-winged blackbirds, marsh wrens, and Maryland yellowthroats like to live, there listen for the tweet, tweet, tweet of the swamp sparrow. It is a sweet but rather monotonous little song that he repeats over and over again to the mate who is busy about her grassy nest in a tussock not far away, but well hidden among the rank swamp growth. Some children say it is difficult to tell the plain, gray-breasted swamp sparrow from the larger song sparrow with the streaked breast, but I am sure their eyes are not so sharp as yours. Field Sparrow. While the neighborly song sparrow and the swamp sparrow delight to be near water, the field sparrow chooses to live in dry uplands, where stunted bushes and cedars cover the hills and overgrown old fields, and towies and brown thrashers keep him company. He is not fond of human society, however, and usually flies away with wavering, uncertain flight from bush to bush, rather than submit to a close scrutiny of his bright chestnut-brown back and crown, flesh-colored bill, gray eyebrow, grayish throat, buffy breast, and light feet. Because his tail is a trifle longer than the chippy's, he is slightly larger than the smallest of our sparrows. Unless you notice that his bill is not black and his head not marked with black and gray streaks, like the chippy's, you might easily mistake him for his sociable, confiding little cousin who comes hopping to the door. How differently he sings! Listen for him some evening after sunset, when his simple vesper hymn, clear, plaintive, and sweet, rings from the bush where he perches especially for the performance. Scarcely any two field sparrows sing precisely alike. Most of them, however, begin with 3 clear, smooth, leisurely whistles. Chir-wee, chir-wee, chir-wee. Then hurry through the other notes, chio, chio-dee-dee-ee-ee, which run rapidly into a trill before they die away. Others reverse the time and diminish the measures toward the close. However sung the song, which makes the uplands tuneful all day and every day from April to August, does not vary its quality, which is as fine as the vesper sparrow's. Hatched in a bush and almost never seen apart from one, this humble little bird might well be called the bush sparrow. Vesper Sparrow. To name this dingy sparrow that haunts the open fields and dusty roadsides, you must notice the white feather on each side of his tail as he spreads it and flies before you to alight upon a fence. Like the song sparrow, this cousin has some fine dark streaks on his throat and breast. If you get near enough, you will notice that his wing coverts, which are a bright chestnut brown, make the rest of his dull sparrow plumage look particularly pale and dull. Some people call him the bay-winged bunting, others the grass finch, because he nests, like the meadowlark and many other foolish birds, on the ground, where mice, snakes, mowing machines, and cats often make sad havoc of his young family. The field sparrow, as we have seen, prefers neglected old fields overgrown with bushes, but the vesper sparrow chooses more broad, open, breezy, grassy country. When busy picking up insects and seed on the ground, he takes no time for singing, but keeps steadily at work, unlike the vireos that sing between bites. With him, music is a momentous matter to which he is quite willing to devote half an hour at a time. He usually mounts to a fence rail or a tree before singing the repetitions of his lovely, serene vesper, which is most likely to be heard about sunset, or at sunrise, if you are not a sleepyhead. Like the rose-breasted grosbeak, he has the delightful habit of singing through the early hours of the summer night. Chipping sparrow, called also chippy, doorstep sparrow, hair sparrow. This summer, a pair of the sociable, friendly little chippies, the smallest members of their clan, decided that they would build in a little boxwood tree on the veranda of our house next to the front door, through which members of the family passed every hour of the day. While we sat within a few feet of the tree, both birds would carry into it fine twigs and grasses for the foundation of the nest, and later long horse hairs which they coiled around and around to form a lining. Where did they get so many hairs? A few might have been switched out of the horses' tails in the stable yard or dropped on the road. But what amazingly bright eyes the birds must have to find them! And how curious that chippies alone, of all the feathered tribe, should always insist upon using them to line their cradles. From the back of a settle, the round of a rocking chair, or the point of the sundial near the veranda, the little chippy would trill his wiry tremolo, like the locust's hot weather warning, while his mate brooded over 5 tiny greenish-blue eggs in the boxwood tree. Before even the robin was awake, earlier than dawn, he would start the morning chorus with the simple little trill that answers for a song to express every emotion throughout the long day. Both he and his mate use a chip call note in talking to each other. When she was tired of brooding, of which she did far more than her share, he would relieve her while she went in search of food. Very often he would carry to the nest a cabbage worm for her, or some other refreshing delicacy. The screen door might bang beside her while she sat close upon her treasures, without causing her to do more than flutter an eyelid. Every member of the family parted the twigs of boxwood that enclosed the nest to look upon her pretty little reddish-brown head, with a gray stripe over the eye and a dark brown line running apparently through it. All of us gently stroked her from time to time. She would occasionally leave the nest for only a minute or two to pick up the crumbs, chickweed, and canary seeds scattered for her about the veranda floor, and showed not the slightest fear when we went on with our regular occupations. We were the breathlessly excited ones, while she hopped calmly about our feet. The chippy is wonderfully tame, perhaps the tamest bird that we have. You may be sure there was joy in the household when the nest in the boxwood contained baby chippies one morning. Not a trace of eggshells which had been carried away early. Insects were the only approved baby food, and we were greatly astonished to see what large ones were thrust down the tiny gaping throats every few minutes. Instead of flying straight to the nest, both parents would frequently stop to rest or get proper direction on the back or the arm of a chair where someone was sitting. In 8 days, the babies began to explore the veranda. Then they left us suddenly, without a goodbye. No guests whom we ever had beneath our roof left a more aching void than that chipping sparrow family. How we hope they will find their way back to the boxwood tree from the Gulf States next April. Tree sparrow, called also winter chippy. When the friendly little chippy leaves us in autumn, this similar but larger sparrow cousin comes into the United States from the north, and some people say they cannot tell the two birds apart, or the field sparrow from either of them. The tree sparrow, which, unlike the chippy, has no black on his forehead, wears an indistinct black spot on the center of his breast, where the chippy is plain gray and the field sparrow is buffy. The tree sparrow has a parti-colored bill, the upper half black, the lower yellow with a black tip, while the chippy has an entirely black bill and the field sparrow a flesh-colored or pale red one. Only the tree sparrow, which is larger than either of the others, although only as large as a full-grown English sparrow, spends the winter in the northern United States, and by that time his confusing relatives are too far south for comparison. It is in spring and autumn that their ranges overlap, and there is any possibility of confusion. When the slate-colored juncos come from their nesting grounds far over the Canadian border, look also for flocks of tree sparrows in fields and dooryards where crabgrass, amaranth, and foxtail grass, among other pestiferous weeds, are most abundant. I do not know how Professor Beale of the Department of Agriculture arrived at his conclusion, but he estimates that in a single state, Iowa, the tree sparrows alone destroy 875 tons of noxious weed seeds every winter. Tree sparrows welcome other winter birds to their friendly flocks that glean a comfortable living from the weed stalks protruding from the snow. Their cheerful, soft, jingling notes have been likened to sparkling frost crystals turned to music. White-throated sparrow, called also Peabody bird, Canada sparrow. What's in a name? Our English cousins over the border are quite sure they hear this sparrow sing the praises of "Sweet Canada, Canada, Canada," while the New Englanders think the bird distinctly says, "I, Peabody, 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 I," extolling the name of one of their first families. You may amuse yourself by fitting whatever words you like to the well-marked meter of the clear, high-pitched, sweet song of 12 notes. Learn to imitate it, and you will be able to whistle up any white throat within reach of your voice in the Adirondacks, the White Mountains, or the deep, cool woods of Maine throughout the summer, although the majority of these hardy sparrows nest on the northern side of the Canadian border. Our hot weather they cannot abide. When there is a keen breath of frost in the air, and the hedgerows and thickets in the United States are taking on glorious autumnal tints, listen for the white-throated migrants conversing with sharp chink call notes that sound like the ring of a marble cutter's chisel. During the autumn and spring migrations, when these birds are likely to give us the semi-annual pleasure of coming closer about our homes with other members of their sociable tribe, you will see that the white throat is a slightly larger and more distinguished bird than the English sparrow, and that he wears a white patch above his plain gray breast. Except the white-crowned sparrow, who wears a black and white striped soldier cap on his head, and who sometimes travels in migrating flocks with his cousins, the white-throated sparrow is the handsomest member of his plain tribe. Fox Sparrow. Do you imagine, because he is called the fox sparrow, that this bird has 4 legs, or that he wears a brush instead of feathers for a tail, or that he makes sly visits to the chicken yard after dark? When you see this rusty reddish-brown coat, you guess that the foxy color of it alone is responsible for his name. His light breast is heavily streaked and spotted with brown, somewhat like a thrush's, and as he is the largest and reddest of the sparrows, it is not at all difficult to identify him. In the autumn, when the juncos come into the United States from Canada, small flocks of their fox sparrow cousins that have spent the summer from the St. Lawrence region and Manitoba northward to Alaska may also be expected. They are often seen in the junco's company among the damp thickets and weeds, along the roadsides, and in stocky fields bounded by woodland. The fox sparrow loves to scratch among the dead leaves for insects trying to hide there, quite as well as if he were a chicken or a towhee or an oven bird who kick up the leaves and earth rubbish after his vigorous manner. From Virginia southward, the people know the fox sparrow only as a winter resident. Before he leaves them in the spring, he begins to practice the clear, rich, ringing song, which fairly startles one with pleasure the first time it is heard. That concludes our read aloud for today. If you'd like to hear more about the birds, you can check out some of the previous chapters. Thank you for being here with me. I love reading to you. It's really fun. Take good care, and I'll see you again soon.